Joining us on the line is Steven Crowder, host of Louder with Crowder. He was once demonetized by YouTube for not violating their policies. Now, a year later, he has been remonetized by YouTube. The question is, do they even know that happened? Steven, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yes, I was demonetized for not violating policy. You are the first journalist to get it correctly.
Yeah, it is amazing. Basically, there was a guy named Carlos Maza. He was mad that you were making jokes about him. And so YouTube basically said you didn't violate their policies, but they had demonetized you because Carlos Maza is a whiny baby. And that was the going, I think that was actually the language they used. And
I don't know who that is.
And for a year, you were unable to make money off of your videos automatically. So now, my real question is, like, do they even know that they remonetized you, or did it sort of like automatically expire?
No. So this was a while, and I've been told by my legal counsel that I can't discuss this. We have been having conversations for a year and a half with YouTube, going back and forth. And we had removed 24 older videos. We had removed the shirt from the merch shop. And it just kind of ended up being these calls where it was browbeating and can you change this to the bordering on suggestions that would be inappropriate. But then we did know that we had sort of met the criteria for whatever reason. People who watch the show know that our content hasn't gotten less offensive. They let us know that we would be remonetized. And we said, okay. And we didn't go public with it until it was happening. And for some reason, The Verge, owned by Vox, by the way, got the scoop before anyone could have possibly known. Only YouTube and us. No one else had access to the account. No one could know when the remonetization was going to take place. And they managed to write a full-length story, of which they did not ask me for comment, before we announced anything publicly the day after. So that's the question that I would like answered.
So that means that 25 seconds from now, there will be a wave of outrage. And then YouTube presumably will be recommended to demonetize you again. So you will have approximately 2 days of monetization. So congratulations on the raise, on the very small raise.
I plan on going to Pink's and getting myself a smorgasbord. Yeah, it really, listen, here's the deal. The monetization, it's nice because it wipes off the only win on the scoreboard that Vox NBC had. That's really all it is. But my main priority has always been, and if ever YouTube has reached for comment, I hope that they would be straightforward in discussing this. I said, it's your right to not monetize us. I understand that. I have the right to be on your platform if it's an open platform with the legal protections that are afforded to you. I am not entitled to make money. But my argument, my fight was always, I want to make sure that our content is still on this platform, not being throttled, not being treated unfairly to comparable leftist content. The monetization was a surprise to me, and it was certainly a surprise to me to see The Verge and Vox get the scoop on it before we announced it. How does that happen? I don't know, Ben.
Just like magic. Okay, Steven, while I have you on the line, I want to ask you about some of the stuff that's been going on in our politics. It's been a while since we've chatted. I mean, you have a full beard, so it's been at least 4 days since we chatted. Because when I last saw you, there was no beard. You're just enough of a man that in 4 days you've been able to grow a full Paul Bunyan beard.
Well, I did it my 23andMe, and somewhere that there's a little Lebanese. So, yeah.
So let's talk about the presidential race. President Trump obviously down pretty heavily in the polls right now. Joe Biden has selected a VP candidate in Kamala Harris, who so wildly enthused people that she dropped out before a single primary. But now apparently everybody is so enthused by her being picked as VP. I've not seen this level of enthusiasm since the last Nickelback concert, frankly. And I'm wondering about your thoughts on Kamala Harris, the vastly exciting new vice presidential candidate who 5 minutes ago was calling Joe Biden a racist who sexually harassed women.
Okay, well, that was going to be what I was going to, because I think everyone is pointing out, right, the sort of indiscretions. Everyone's pointing out the inconsistencies with her prosecuting nonviolent drug offenders, with her extending sentences, right, with her really being an anti-sort of social justice prosecutor and now claiming that mantle. Of course, also claiming that she listened to Tupac before it actually was a thing. So, yes, my question is this. Was there ever a conversation? Because effectively, Kamala Harris publicly decried Joe Biden as, really, you could summarize it as like a rapey Jim Crow. Basically, she said, I believe your sexual accusers and you supported segregation in one form or another or stood on a platform with people who did. So that's really, was there a conversation between her and Biden when he announced her going like, okay, but listen, Joe, you did it, right? I mean, you want to know the answer to that. I had Brian Callen on the show yesterday who had these accusations. And the first thing I said was, Brian, did you do it? Are you a rapist? And he answered, no. I could not have a relationship with someone, especially if I had been someone publicly accusing them of sexual assault and then running a ticket with them without hashing it out. So that's what I wonder. I don't think they have, because I think that this is entirely about political expediency. They are not genuine. And I will say this. I know the polls have Donald Trump behind, but here's something that interests me, and you're more of a political wonk than I am. But the recent poll that came out from Rasmussen, 36% of African Americans support Donald Trump, which is a record high outside of George Bush right after 9/11, right? If you just get half of that to vote for Donald Trump in states like Ohio and Michigan, you're talking about Wayne County, you take areas like Columbus, Cincinnati, Toledo, that would make a huge difference in the Rust Belt. And Kamala Harris is surprisingly unpopular for a biracial vice presidential candidate. It's almost like Joe Biden doesn't want to win this election, but I don't know.
I mean, what I've been amazed by is the fact that he's been so obvious and transparent in the fact that he is not going to survive his first term. I mean, he's almost saying it straight out. I mean, he says he's a transitional figure, and yet the media are treating him as though he is a robust character. I mean, Brian Stelter this week on Reliable Sources, the most reliable of all sources, he did a whole montage of various conservatives talking about Joe Biden's health, and then he played a video of Joe Biden riding a bicycle. And he said, look, Joe Biden's riding a bicycle. How dare you question the vigorous nature of Joe Biden's mind? And I was like, my 4-year-old son rides a bicycle. There's a homeless guy who rides a bicycle down my street. Before the front wheel falls off, he takes a crowbar out of the back of the bike and then just beats the living crap out of his bike. I don't feel like either of those people is qualified to be president mentally. So I'm just wondering exactly how the media have shifted the narrative to Joe Biden is vigorous and robust again, when it's pretty obvious that Harris will be the president if he is elected.
I think you're being unfair to Stelter. Let me explain why. You know how this works in this industry where you plan a segment and maybe things don't fully come together. Would have been a great segment had Stelter, as he thought he would, gotten the rights to the Queen catalog. But then, unfortunately, it just ended up being this clip with no music, and it's just awkward at that point. So Stelter did more harm than good. I think the beauty of this, though, Ben, is that it really is, and I don't think anyone other than Donald Trump could have done this, because he is so bombastic, because he is so... I guess you could say prickly for these folks, that now they actually go out and are carrying the water for Joe Biden. And it is so clear when you juxtapose what someone like Stelter says with how Joe Biden speaks or acts, that this is someone who's really trying to drag them past the finish line. You know, when you had a Barack Obama, I think a lot of people didn't really see the media bias at play, because they didn't have to drag Barack Obama across the finish line. Listen, this is a guy who was articulate. This is a guy who could speak well. This is a guy who could inspire people. But then with Hillary Clinton, we kind of saw it because she's immensely unlikable. And now with Joe Biden, they're going, why should he have to take a cognitive test? The fact that they're saying there shouldn't be any debates, it's so clear for the American public when you have these weak candidates that it's surprising to me. It is remarkable that the left has almost all of Hollywood, almost all of the mainstream media. When I say that, I mean ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN. They have almost all of the music industry, almost all public sector workers, all of education, and they still lose elections. How?
It is an incredible thing. All right, so Stephen, if you had to give advice to President Trump at this point, what would your debate advice for him be with Joe Biden? I basically suggested that he should just call Biden a not alive person to his face on the stage. I think that he should just pretend that Joe Biden doesn't exist. Anything Biden says, he should say, listen, I appreciate your perspective, Joe, if you can even remember it from like 30 seconds ago, but you are not going to be the president. Your VP is. And so now let's talk about the person who's actually going to be president, Kamala Harris, because the big problem he's had so far is being able to categorize Biden in any way. Biden, as we've talked about before, he's a dead horse. It's hard to beat a dead horse. But at this point, he's made clear that the person he has selected to replace him, if God forbid something happens to him, is going to be a radical like Kamala Harris. What would you advise Trump to do?
Well, it is hard to beat a dead horse, but I'm a fan of glue. So I do think he should go out there and show up first. Donald Trump shows up, that's half the battle. And we say that, sort of this colloquialism, showing up is half the battle. No, in this case, showing up is really half the win because it's Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And Joe Biden may not show up mentally. Outside of that, I think you're right that he should call into question his mental faculties. What I would do if I were Donald Trump is callbacks. What do I mean? I would state some things with great specificity early on in the debate and call it back and then toss the onus to Joe Biden. Like, what we talked about earlier, because I guarantee you Joe Biden won't remember it. And that's just me. That's what I would do. I've had to do some headcanons before when we've done debates, or even before when I used to compete in combat sports. There is an art of warfare in getting in someone's head. And if I were Donald Trump, I would front load it with a lot of rat-tat-tat-tat facts, information, and try and call Joe Biden's attention back to them later on in the debates. He won't know where he is. And I think, if anything, it'll be sad.
Oh, man, that sounds fantastic, actually. In the first 30 seconds of the debate, he should just look at Joe Biden and say, people, women, man, television, bird. And then 45 minutes come back and say, Joe, do you remember what those words were? Give him
just like a real life game of duel and back, where it's like 3 N, and you have to remember 2 spaces back.
Exactly. Give him the actual mental competency test on stage. I think that'd be kind of fantastic. Well, Steven Crowder, congratulations on your remonetization, and condolences in advance to your demonetization 1 week from now. Steven Crowder of Louder with Crowder. Really appreciate it, dude.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, brother.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.